All right. I forgot to turn on the mic again. I'm sorry, guys. One more time. Let me just start over here. All right, so now that you guys can all hear me, this is the third build, and I still have not remembered to turn on the microphone the first time around. This is horrible. All right, anyways, the long story short, let me get back to it. This is the third build that we're doing. This is kind of like the build we did yesterday, but it is a little different. So we are basically adding a graphic card, a dedicated GPU to the system, as well as we are adding in a better power supply to handle that GPU. So let's get over to the product screen. Let me show you back to the product screen here. Let me put this back and back to there. Hopefully you guys can hear me now without any problem. It looks like it's all on now. All right, so we're still going with the same processor as we did yesterday, which is an AMD Ryzen 5. This is a Ryzen 5 5600G. We're still going with the same SSD, which is a 500 gigabyte Gen 4 Western Digital Black. RAM is the same, Corsair, 16 gigabytes, 3200 megahertz. It's Vengeance memory. Same motherboard. Motherboard is a B450M DS3H Wi-Fi, so it has Wi-Fi built in. The big difference here is the graphic card. The graphic card, we are going into a AMD Radeon RX 6500 XT, which is a decent graphic card for a workstation card. And the power supply, we're going with a little heavier one. This is a 650 watt EVGA bronze power supply. It's just to help out with keeping the graphic card running at the proper amount of power and not being underpowered. This also, I think, is semi-modular. Yes, it's semi-modular, meaning that basically the main power for the motherboard is not modular, but everything else is modular on it. So we will be doing that as well. Let me put this off to the side. That's all the specs for the machine. What we're going to need to build, same thing that we had yesterday. Screwdriver, wire ties, smaller screwdriver, and pair of diagonal cutters, which is just regular cutters, and a knife to open up all the packaging. At this point, also the case we are still using is the same case, which is a Thermaltake Versa H17. It's a really popular case. I'm surprised that I heard that Thermaltake is discontinuing it, which is a shame because it's a really nice case. We're going to start with a few basic components. Yes, thank you for confirming that you can hear me. At least we're going forward. So we're going to start with not the graphic card. The graphic card and power supply we're going to put off to the side. We're going to start with the motherboard, CPU, RAM, and the hard drive. That's going to go all on one motherboard, so that's why we're going to go with that first. So I'm going to just move this all off so I can get down to the motherboard first. I'm going to open up the box. Get your SATA cables, which we're not going to use because we have an NVMe drive. Motherboard. The Wi-Fi antennas. Wi-Fi antennas. I'm going to leave them packaged for now. We'll take them out later. Motherboard itself. The I/O shield. Motherboard manual and disk, which we're not going to use. Close that down. We're going to reuse the box just so that we can build on top of it. Okay. All right. Garbage. Okay, we're going to start with the CPU first. And we're going to open up all the RAM sockets. All right, we do have 4 RAM sockets on here, but we are only using 2 of those sockets because it's a dual kit. It's going to put our RAM into dual channel mode. Since it's DDR4, it does need to be in dual channel mode to give you the better performance. DDR5, you won't need to worry about that going forward because all DDR5 is already dual channel, so you won't need to have to worry about each chip. It's one less thing to worry about. If you are going DDR5, right now we are not recommending it at the current time at the recording of this live stream, because if we do, they've had some problems with DDR5, and DDR5 basically is not, in my opinion, fully tested yet. We've had some issues with it, we ran into problems, so we're kind of avoiding it until things are straightened out a little bit more. We'll probably do another test in another month just to see how things are going with it. But the last time we tested, we ended up having to return all the equipment because it just was not testing out right. It was failing a lot of tests, it was failing a lot of, we were getting weird, funky stuff going on. So we're not recommending that to clients right now until it becomes a little more stable. Nothing else in there, no, that's garbage. Okay. Processor, more garbage. If you want to keep the manuals, you can keep the manuals. We don't usually give the manuals anymore. We used to, but the manuals are already out of date before the product is even put into a box. Let's put this away. Okay, as I was taking things out, I was just taking the CPU fan out, as well as the CPU itself. The fan, if you notice, there is some sort of paste on there. This paste, you don't want to touch that, obviously, because it's already pre-applied thermal paste. So we won't be touching that. Just put that, you put this upside down on the table, of course, so you don't end up messing that up. If you happen to mess up that thermal paste, you'll need to reapply it. So you'll need to take it off, and then you'll need to buy a tube of thermal paste and put it back on. And you'll also need to buy thermal paste remover, which is just alcohol, like an alcohol rub. So. All right, Ryzen 5 processor. Be careful, of course. AMD does have pins, so you want to be very careful at lifting this up. There are pins on this side, as you can see. And what you're going to do is you're going to line up the arrow with the arrow on the motherboard. In this case, the arrow is on this side. It's very, very small. You can just basically take a look a little closer and see where it is. If you're unsure, you can also still, always access the manual and find out where it is as well. But if you look at the motherboard, you'll see that there's a little marker indicator saying which side to go in. Once it's in, just hold down with one finger. It should slide in nicely. If you're pushing it, you're going to make a problem for bending the pins, so just be careful. Try not to do that. If you bend a pin, I don't think they cover it under warranty. So again, that would be up to AMD and the motherboard manufacturer. Most likely more up to AMD about the bent pin. And you may have a problem gaining warranty because it's a physical damage item at that point. So just be very careful. If you're unsure, go very slow. When I put this down on here, I don't put the AMD logo this way because this way blocks your RAM. So it'll block one socket. So that's the reason why I put it reverse. Also, the cable is more inclined to go this direction because it's shorter. So just go that way. And you want to line it up with the little screw holes at the bottom. Just put them gently on. And then at this point, screw everything down. What you're going to do is you're going to go corner to corner. So in other words, I went to this corner, then I went to the opposite corner, and I go down to this corner on this side, and then this corner on the other side, which is harder just for me to see. There we go. Mentioning torque settings, I have my screwdriver set to 17. If you're unsure about torque settings, just use a regular screwdriver and just screw them in until it's tight. And don't go any further. Don't go like turning it extra than, you don't need to turn it any more extra than whatever's there. CPU fan, it's a 4-pin connector. It goes right onto the one that's labeled CPU. And we're going to do RAM next. So we're going to take the RAM out of the box. Right out. There. Plastic cover. Take one out. What you want to do is you want to get rid of the little plastic piece that they put over the RAM, over the logo. And then you're going to line it up inside the socket, and you're going to put it into the first and the second socket here. The gray ones, I think, are the ones, yeah. So this is DDR slot 1, this is DDR slot 2, this is 3, and that's 4. And the reason why I know this is because it's written right here on the motherboard. It says 1, 3, 2, 4. So it's 1, 3, 2, 4. So you're going to be skipping 1 and then 2. So just basically you're filling in like socket colors. So one's gray. It's like, I think it's a gray blue. It's kind of like grayish blue socket. So you're going to just do those sockets only. If you do the other ones, I've had motherboards work if you put it in the other 2 sockets. It's just, you may not get dual channel mode if you're in the wrong sockets. If you're doing number 1 and number 3, let's say, if you're putting them together, you would have 1, 3, and that would not put you in dual channel mode. Dual channel mode goes between the 2 channels. So you need it to be in the same bank for it to work right. So now you're in dual channel mode, you're connected. Did I take that label off? Yes, I did. I have 2 plastic pieces over here. Okay, good. All right, so RAM is done. The next thing is the M.2, which is the SSD drive. Okay, it's really an NVMe drive. Most websites you'll see it still says SSD on the end of it, because technically it still is SSD, but it's the type is an NVMe, which gives you a much faster performance than SSD. SSD only is SATA 3 performance. This is really a lot faster. You're talking 3,600 megabytes per second, which is a lot faster. You'll get a lot more throughput. And be careful of your fingers. Okay, lots of more, that's garbage. Always recycle your boxes if you don't need them. So same thing with the manuals, paper, plastic. There is a lot of paper and plastic here if you noticed. Plastic, there we go. Now this is going to go into this socket here. Unfortunately, I didn't take the screw out yet, which is on this side. This is a 80 millimeter, I think it is. So it's a regular standard 80 millimeter. You're just going to basically take, I'm gonna put that back down, take your small screwdriver, which in this case is an iFixit. It's a smaller one. I'm gonna take that screw out. Don't use an electric screwdriver on the motherboard like this, because this screw is really small, very easy to strip. So do not use an electronic screwdriver. You should be using a manual screwdriver, and do not lose the screw, because that is very important. They do not give you an extra one, so please don't lose it. Now what you want to do is you want to do a 45-degree angle into the motherboard and just slide it into the slot until the little gold contacts go in. Now the gold contacts, there's a little notch, so it's notched out the correct direction. You really can't screw putting this up in. It should just slide right in just like it did. You're going to take your other finger and push it down to the motherboard where the standoff is, and then screw in the standoff. Now if you have a different size M.2, you should have adjusted that before you put it into the socket. If you put it on and line it up and it doesn't line up with the standoff, then take it back out, and then you would just readjust to whichever number you want to put it at. At this point, that is it for the motherboard. You don't really need to do much more than that. So we're ready to start putting it in the case. Let me just get some of this plastic out of here. Okay, gonna move this off. Motherboard, we're gonna slide up out of the way. All the extra parts I'm just gonna slide out of the way except for the I/O shield because I don't want to forget it. All right. Garbage. Sorry, it's a little bit of cleanup here. Right. A little more room. We don't need a keyboard for now. Let's put that away. There we go. All right. System. We're going to take up the case now at this point. Case. Oh, wait. Okay. Case. Wow, that's not very impressive looking from that angle. All right, so the case is just a standard black case. It's very minimalistic. The only thing that makes this case kind of bad is if you want really high airflow, you're not going to get it because it's a closed off front panel of the case. So if you're concerned about airflow, like if you have a lot of hard drives, if you have a lot of, let's say, water cooling or something that requires a lot of heat removal of heat, you're going to have that problem with this case. So you might want to try something different. But for basic everyday use, it's very clean looking, it's very easy to use, it's still very well designed for thermals, but it's not designed for like really high-end heat components, just regular stuff. Let me go back to 2, there we go. Okay, so it does come with a normal case fan for exhaust. There is no intake fans in the front here, but you can add them. And there is a decent amount of room to actually suck in some air from the front. So it's not bad, it's just not the best for things with a lot of drives, like hard drives that add a lot of heat. So you want to be kind of careful with that. If you have like 4 or 5 hard drives or something, this is probably not the case for you. Even if it does have mounts for like 4 or 5 hard drives, it's mostly mounts for SSDs. It's even labeled SSD. You do have some mounts. Yeah, you have a mount that's down here. I don't know if you can even see that. There's a mount here that you can actually do for a regular 3.5 inch drive, so you can do that. These are all the 2.5 inch drives at the top. So this does allow for a hard drive. It's just, one hard drive, not a problem. 4 hard drives, maybe, it might be an issue. So, just keep an eye on what your temperature is if that's the case and try to maybe avoid that. SSDs are not as much heat in the aspect of like thermals when it comes to like the regular standard SSDs, not the NVMEs. They're kind of okay with the temperature. They're not that bad. They do run on a hotter side anyway, and that seems to be okay. But it may add more heat to your case is really what I'd be more concerned about. I/O shield, just a regular I/O shield. This one's pretty easy to install. There's no real push downs or anything. Yesterday I did install this incorrectly because I did not get all the way pushed into the actual case, so this time I'm going to definitely get it in there. Now, if you're to be very careful, this is pretty sharp, so just make sure your fingers that you are not pushing on anything that will poke you or cut your finger. I mean, we can use common sense here, I think. If you start pushing on it and it starts cutting your finger, stop pushing on it, maybe clean up the blood. So once that's done, you just want to, now we're pretty much ready to mount the motherboard. I think I don't have to change anything. The last time I didn't have to change anything. Let me just double check. What I'm checking is basically these little standoffs that are down here. I'm checking to make sure that they are in the right position for the motherboard, which they are. You just line them up. If you're new to this, take count of how many you're supposed to screw down before you put the motherboard down, and take a count down here of how many standoffs you have. They should match. If they don't match, then take the motherboard back out because you missed one, or you may need to take a standoff out or put one in, depending upon if you're missing one. The motherboard should mount securely into the case, so try to line it up with the I/O shield. All the ports should be sitting outside of the I/O shield. If they are not, and you have a piece of metal going into one of the ports, now is the time to take a look to make sure that that is not the case. I'm going to take a quick look on this side. Everything is okay, but if there is like a metal piece that's sticking into one of the ports, pull the motherboard back out. You need to readjust to put it back in properly. Now with this case, you want to push the motherboard over until it clicks into place, which it just did. And now at this point, you're ready to take the screws, which I keep forgetting to take the screws out before I do this. The screws on the opposite side of this case, so I'm just gonna, don't lift the case back up with the motherboard in it. It'll slide out. So you wanna, if you've done this before, you can easily take that out. If not, take the motherboard back out and grab the bag of screws, but I'm just gonna untie it because I've done this before and it's not that hard to just cut it out. Okay, so screws. The screws that come with this case are plenty of different types. So I'm going to show you the ones for the motherboard. The motherboard ones are really small. Get this out. There's some wire ties. They are labeled, which is nice. These are 3.5 inch. The 3.5 inch hard drives. That's the one down on the bottom here. I'm going to put it off to the side. We're not using it. And this is for the 2.5 inch, which we're going to put off to the side because we're not using that either. And we're also not using the stupid little speakers, so we're going to put that off to the side. If you want, you can install the speaker. To install the speaker, I didn't go over it last time, so I guess I should probably do it this time. To install the speaker, it's pretty simple. It's a regular 4-pin connector there. It goes down onto the motherboard in the speaker slot. And to find it is a little tricky. This motherboard may not have it. Let's see, it does have it somewhere. LED. Where are you? LED. This thing has a lot of LED options, but no speaker. Oh no, there it is. I think. No. No, that's not it. Oh, here it is. The speaker is down below where the front panel connectors are. So that's the second row up, one row over. I'm going to disconnect this because I can't stand the noise. But if you want to do it, you would put it down here, down by the front panel connectors, and it's actually labeled speaker on there, so it's not too hard. You can't really miss it. We got screws for the motherboard. So I'm just going to take these out. I should have brought the tray over. All right, it's fine. I'll use this tray. I'll use this tray. There we go. Alrighty. So there's a lot of screws here. Let me just go over what we got. This screw is for the motherboard. So I don't know if you can put this up a little bit. Come on, there we go. It's a very thin type of screw with a very thin head at the top. And this is the only screw that fits into those stand-ups down at the bottom. So you gotta make sure to use this one. If you start screwing in and it's really hard to turn, then you got the wrong screw because it's probably too thick. So you wanna go and find the thinner one. And let me just turn this out. There we go. Those screwed stand-ups are here, 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 and there. So I'm just gonna start. I always start in the middle of the board. Usually I put the case up to do this because it's a little easier to see everything. But in this case, I'm just going to work with what I got. And just do not do this blindfolded. Nope, can't see. Okay, gonna have to stand. There's no other choice. Okay. So And the other side over here, way down, there's a screw hole. Same thing, this one's by the power at the top. Oops. Nope. It's not going to want to go that way. There we go. If you're unsure on how to do this, get a magnet tip screwdriver and use just your free hand to put that all the way in. If you're unsure, you can always back out the screw all the way and re-thread it. Or in other words, back thread it and thread it forward if you're unsure. If you're really new to this, like this is like literally your first system build, you should not be using an electric screwdriver. You should use a regular screwdriver at that point. Do not use an electric one because you're probably going to end up making a mistake and drilling through a motherboard accidentally or something stupid. So try to be a little more careful. You can make less mistakes with a regular screwdriver, or at least you know that you're making a mistake a little earlier with an electric screwdriver. If you're not sure if the screw is already unthreaded, you may cross-thread it. And then cross-threading, you really can't fix that. The only option is to replace the standoff. Thermaltake gives you like an extra few, but if your motherboard's very long, you're not going to have those extra few because you're going to need them on the actual case. So if you have a shorter motherboard, you won't really need them very much, and then you'll be able to have those extra standoffs to, you know, just in case you're making a mistake. Now, what I'm doing here is I'm just unclipping the fan cable. There we go, from the little wire tie. I don't like the metal wire ties, that's why I'm gonna still wire tie this back pretty much the same way, because the connection is right here, which is very, very close to the fan. So I'm just gonna wire tie this back, but I wanna use a wire tie that does not have metal in it. These wire ties are all plastic. You don't wanna put more metal into the system than is necessary, especially roaming around the system. You don't want anything that could come off and then short out anything on the motherboard. So just be careful and use just regular plastic ties. The plastic ties, you can buy them anywhere. When you go to buy your components and you don't have them, you can either buy them at Micro Center or you can buy them online. You got Monoprice online that does sell a whole bunch of those as well, so that's where we get them, but you can get them almost anywhere. I'm tucking this cable up and underneath the motherboard here just to kind of keep it out of the way. I just don't want it getting in close to the fans, so that's why I'm kind of tucking this underneath. It should stay. If you're not sure, you can always put it under like over here with a little piece of electrical tape, black electrical tape. You can, you know, electric tape it up to here. The problem with electrical tape though, if you don't wrap it all the way around the fan, it's going to come off and then it defeats the whole purpose. So you may want to have to take the fan out and wrap the electrical tape around the fan and then put the black piece, you know, put the cabling down on the bottom and then put the fan back if you're really concerned. Honestly, this I don't think is going to actually go into the fans here. I've never really had them go into the fans, even when this comes out. It's really never gone into the fan. I'm just doing this really just so to keep everything kind of tight and neaty. So neat, not needy. All right. Yeah, we're up to the LEDs in the front. So front panel LEDs and power button. Let me just move those screws out of there so I don't drop them. I'm just going to turn the case around. So I'm flipping it around here. So this is the back of the case, back panel. And they give you all these lovely cables. All of these cables are going to your front I/O. So it's front USB, front HD audio, and front power button, and reset button. This one has a reset. The reason why there's so many cables is because there's different types of USB and different types of LEDs and stuff. So I'm going to separate these based off of thickness of cable first. So these are very thin cables. The very thin cables are the ones that go to kind of one spot on the board. So that's why I'm separating this. So we're going to separate those out, and then we're going to separate these off to the left. So this is my left. I don't know if that's left to you guys. So my left going off to the left, this one going off to the right, and I just want to keep that separated. So we now have one strand going this way, one strand going that way. We're going to now cable tie these all together because these are the ones that are going to one section. So the thinner cables are all going to one section. These do not tie together yet because they are going to different spots on the board. So you want to tie these last. So for right now, I'm just going to tie some of this up. I'm using the ties that kind of came with the case, but you can use any, again, you can use any ties. You don't have to go crazy. Just don't use Velcro in here. That's a bad idea. So just don't use Velcro inside a computer. Velcro ties are good for like your desk. You know what I mean? Like if you want to tie up, let's say, your keyboard and your mouse and all that stuff, you can certainly do that with Velcro on your desk. But don't use Velcro inside a computer. And there's a lot of reasons, but I mean the primary one is that it's not going to hold. It's going to definitely come apart over time. And you're not going to readjust any of this stuff once you get everything in place. If you do, you're going to readjust maybe one section of wiring, and then you could just cut some of those ties, throw them out, put a different one on, and that's it. But they do hold better than Velcro. Velcro doesn't really hold too well, but that's what it's made for. It's just made to work for temporary purposes. So, you might want to move something around or whatever, that's fine. But inside a case, most of the time, you're not going to move stuff around. Plus, Velcro collects dust. These do not. So there's a win right there. Because if you ever have to clean a PC that had Velcro on the inside, you want to shoot yourself because it's really difficult to clean the stupid Velcro ties. In fact, it's just easier to take the Velcro off and replace them with the proper ties. Now, before I put this in, there are some tie downs here. I'm ignoring these tie downs right now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put all the connections on first, and then I'm going to go back and then pull the rest of the wiring back this way, all the slack onto this side of the case, all onto this side here, away from the side that basically you would maintain normally. This is just normal way of running wiring. You can run it in different directions. If you want to go a different direction, you find a better way, let me know, because I'm always interested in seeing if there's better ways to doing things. So if there's a better way, please let me know. This is audio. Yeah, this is HD audio. So HD audio is going to go into this socket here. There's little holes. I'm not sure if you can see all that. There's little holes here. This hole's going across to the other side of the board from the bottom, so I know that that's going to go over there. This one I think was here for the USB 3.0, and then USB 2.0 I think was also in the back. At this point, we can now flip the case and then plug those in really quickly. Don't do too much at once, especially if you're new. I'm going slow, and I'm actually going through all of this specifically, but normally what I would do is I'd throw all this stuff in right away, and then I would do all the cable management close to almost last, which is really not a great way of doing things, but if you know what you're doing and you know where the cables all go, it really doesn't matter too much. But, again, I'm going kind of slow. I'm kind of going through each little step by step, so I'm taking my time. But you know what? You should take your time. If you're not, especially if you're new, don't rush. If you rush, that's when you make mistakes, and then you're going to end up spending more time correcting all the mistakes. So we're back to this side. All the cables are pulled through, and on this side, let me just still separate it. Cheating a little bit here because this is not separated. Yeah, let's separate. Okay. So, why does that not look separated? Because it's not separated. Am I just twisting this more? Here we go. Okay, now it's on the other side of the cable. There we go. Okay, so now it's all untwisted. So these are the front panel connectors. The front panel connectors, I'm not sure if you can really see these. These are really, really small. Not really going to move that. They basically have them labeled reset, HDD, which is the hard drive. The other one is power LED and the power switch. All of them are labeled. They're all labeled on the motherboard. What the most important thing are the LEDs. Make sure the LEDs are labeled and they are in the plus and minus orientation. So if it says plus on one side, it should say plus on the same one for the socket, for the pin that you're going to push it onto. So you're going to go down to the bottom and you're going to basically push into the pins. If I can read. Yeah, they're usually the same. So power switch on top. I think that's power switch. Yeah, it's power switch. Power switch on top. You can always start with the HDD. Actually, it's probably best to start with the HDD light because that one's the one further to the left. This one happens to go positive, negative, which is actually kind of nice. Reset switch, which goes under the power switch, which I might just take the power switch off. Yeah, it's in my way. I'm going to do the reset switch first, and then put the power switch up on top. If you find that stuff is in your way, just take it out, plug it back in. Now, if you want to use a pair of needle nose pliers here to help you kind of get the wires on there, go for it. I've just done this 20,000 times with my fingers, so I'm just used to it at this point. But if you want to use needle nose pliers, go right ahead. Now, if you use needle nose pliers, just be sure to be careful not to have to push too hard, because if you push, you will end up bending a pin, and bending a pin will not be a good day for you, because then you're going to have to bend it back. I just connected the USB 3.0 header. That's the one that's a little thicker. These only fit one way, so if you're pushing on it the wrong way, then you know you've got the wrong one or you got it the wrong direction. And in that case, reread what it says. It literally does have it labeled USB, like this one's labeled USB 3.0. The other one is labeled HD audio, so you know which one it goes to. It is also labeled on the motherboard the same thing. So match it up. Match it up. Come on. There we go. HD audio. If you want to connect the HD audio, that's up to you. If it's your machine, I usually, if it's my own machine, I don't even bother because I never use the HD audio in the front. But again, you're welcome to use it if you want to use it. If you use it, great. But I do recommend that you try plugging it into the back, since the front HD audio is more interference and stuff like that you can get with that. So, all right, we're up to the power supply. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull some of this cable back right now and start tying down a little bit of this before I put the power supply in. Some of it I just want to get out of the way, just to kind of keep things neat. And if you are really new to this, this would definitely help a lot more for you, because you're pulling all the wire out of the other side. Try to pull as much as you can. Try not to tangle anymore. These can go down here and out of the way. Now there's an anchor point here, there's an anchor point here, 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 for this wire going this direction. I'm just trying to pull back the slack a little bit so that all the slack is in the correct direction, and I'm keeping it away from this area here because I'm going to put the power supply into here and I need that room. So next what we're going to do is, I'm not going to tie this down yet, I just wanted to pull back the slack, get it into the proper position. I'm going to do the ties last, but if you feel more comfortable with tying all these down, tie them down now. That's fine. At this point the wire is run, you can do that. I just want to save on ties and just do it a little bit quicker, so I'm going to avoid that. Not going to do the graphic card yet. Put that over there. Power supply. Oh wait, yeah, this one's a heavy one. All right. Don't need this. Of course. Oh, stupid picks. All right, this needs to come out. Just bear with me for a second. I'm just gonna put my tools away, the other tools away. Small stuff is a pain when it's in your way. All right. I don't need this box either, so we have a little more room. All right, power supply. This power supply is a little larger. That's why I'm kind of making room for this. This is also modular, so we're gonna have to plug in what we need. Just unwrapping the box is not very exciting. Let me get rid of that. Okay. Box unwrapped. Get this thing going. Come on. Manual, not really needed. All right, cables. Power cord. Some insulation. Testing thing. Oh. Yeah, see, they give you Velcro. Why would you take Velcro for a power supply? Like, this is a bad idea. Just use regular wire ties. Use the Velcro for your computer keyboard, I guess, or something, if you want to use that. This off. Ow. Damn. Tape. All right. Okay. Okay, a few things here we're gonna have to go over. Okay. First of all, 650 watt power supply. There is a little piece of plastic here on the stupid logo, so just take that off. Don't leave plastic in the inside of the system. That doesn't need to be there. It'll just find its way into a fan eventually, so best to take it off. I'm gonna clip the wires on this side just to get rid of that little wire tie that they have. It's a piece of junk. All right. This power supply has modular, so semi-modular. The part that's not modular is what's obviously connected here, which if we turn it, I'm gonna show you. Just be very careful. There we go. All right, so the motherboard and the CPU are already connected onto here. That's the part that's not modular. So I think, yes, this is the CPU. No, I'm sorry. Wait a minute. It's a little more non-modular than I thought. Okay, so they have the motherboard, which is your big pin connector. Then it's got the CPU one. By the way, this is all labeled. Let me bring this down here. There we go. CPU. And then this one is labeled PCIe, which is for your graphic card. So they already have the graphic card connected. They already have the CPU and the power already automatically connected. That's actually the most common ones. That's most of the common ones that you're actually going to use. So you're really probably not going to plug anything in here, except if you have more VGA connections, if you need those. But honestly, this graphic card doesn't need more than one of these plugs, so it should be fine without it. At this point, there's really nothing else to plug in. I'm just going to double check just to be sure I'm not going crazy, that I'm missing something. Let's see. Yeah, they only got, SATA connections, modular, Molex connections, and some more VGA connections. So that's your peripheral, your SATA, your SATA 1, 2, and 3, your CPU. This is a lot of connections. You really don't need any of this. What we already have here plugged in is already what we're going to use. If you have a lot of if you have a lot of SATA drives, or if you have a lot of other peripherals, you're going to need to plug those in. I say peripherals, that's not right. If you have other drives, or if you have other accessories that you need to plug into, yeah, if you have a secondary graphic card, sure, you'll need that. Majority of the time, you're probably not going to need this, but don't get rid of your cables. These cables are the only cables that will work with this power supply. Do not mix and match your modular cables. You will be sorry. It will blow up your device. It'll blow up something, either your power supply, or it may blow up your device that you're connected it into. So be sure not to lose your cables. These cables, for the customer, for when we're building a system, these cables still go in the system. We just tie them down at the bottom of the base away from everything. So you'll see that in a few minutes when I'm done. Let's get the power supply in. We have all the connections, so we don't need to plug anything in, but you would plug this in before you put it in there, because it's a lot easier if you need to plug something in. Flip this off. The fan is going to be facing down in this case. So it's going to be, because there's already a filter on the bottom and a holes for taking in intake. So that is where you're going to put the fan. You're going to put the fan downwards, not upwards. So it's going to be facing down. So I'm going to take this, face it down. So the top is going to the top part of the case. I'm going to slide that in. And let go of it for a second. I got to get the screws. Okay, the screws are with the power plug. Here's your power plug. And they were supposed to be in here. Whoa, wait a minute. Oh, no, they're not. They're over here. They're with, they have an extra piece in here. This is a connector for connecting to the motherboard connection, which is this big connection here. That allows you to turn on the power supply without the motherboard being connected. You probably say to yourself, well, why do I need to do that? In this case, we really don't have a reason to do it, but you would use this for custom water loops or custom pumps. If you have a pump that pumps all the water through the entire system, you have to bleed the system sometimes, or you'll have to fill up the system at some points. And you don't want to keep turning your computer on and off. You may not want to turn the computer on at all while you're filling water through an entire loop, just in case you want to make sure that if anything leaks, you can clean that up before you actually turn on all the rest of the components. So this allows you to do that. You disconnect your motherboard, you would connect this, and then you would flip the switch on. It'll turn on the pumps, but not the motherboard. In this case, we're not going to use this, but it's just nice to have. So you just put it off to the side. And this does have the screws in it, by the way, for the back of the power supply. So we're going to take that. I'll put that out here. Let's open this up. The screws usually come with the power supply, but if they don't, the case does come with these screws, by the way. So it's the same type. Not sure if you can see that. That's a little thicker. There's a thicker knob on the top, and there's also the screw portion is a little bit of a thicker screw. That is used for the power supply. And what you're going to do is you're just going to put the power supply up, align it, and then screw it in. Now, normally you could put this up, the case, you put the case upwards. That would be a better solution, because if the case was upwards, it's a little easier to work with. I'm going to do it this way just because it's a little easier to see on the camera. There I am screwing in from the back, but you probably should lift the case. It's a little easier to do that way. My battery might be dying. All right. Trying to win this one. No. Oh. Okay. That's done. So the power supply is basically mounted downwards. So the fan is facing the bottom of the case, where there's a filter here. If you need to clean your system, that's where all the dust will be. So if you want to turn your machine off, you take that off and clean out from the bottom. At this point, we can now start feeding all these cables up into the case. So we're going to take this, we're going to feed it up into the first hole here. This is where the motherboard connector is for that one. I always push the whole cable up there just to get it up there so it's ready for connection. The CPU is going to go the other way. So try to thread it so it's out of the way of this. Thread it all the way up into the top part of the case, upper hole up here. That's where that power for that CPU is. And then you got your PCIe connection for your graphic card. The graphic card goes in from the back of the case like this. This is the back of the case. It extends into the front of the case this direction. You want to go up from the bottom because it's the most cleanest you're going to get from this. If you go from the right, it's not as clean looking. It looks more clean from the bottom. So you're going to have to just see like what I'm talking about when I plug it in. You'll see what it looks like from that side. If you can get the cable in there. Why are we stuck? Oh, it's stuck on a stupid thing. There we go. Oh, it should be in there. All right. At this point, you want to flip back over. And make sure all the cables came through, which they have. Here's one, the other one's up here, and then this one is a little bit, it just got stuck on something. Of course. Just pull the cable all the way through first, get it all the way out. And once you got the cable out, if something came unplugged, which in this case was my HDD light, came unplugged, you just plug it back in into the right spot. If I can see. Yeah. There we go. HDD. Of course, I had to pull out the one that was the hardest to put back in. It's always the case. It's the one all the way to the left. I'm going to pull the power LED on top so I can get to the one on the bottom. By the way, there's two rows of pins here, and that's what kind of makes it a little difficult to get the wires on there. They also sell a little block that helps with putting all these things in. I don't recommend the block, unfortunately, because the block usually is defective. Sometimes if you get a defective one, it'll drive you nuts trying to figure out like which pin is not working off of which block. But if you're really new to this, you could buy that, and you can try to get away with doing that instead, which is a little easier because then it allows you to put all the pins together at the top before you push it down to the bottom part of the motherboard. This has got a lot of slack, so I'm just pulling up. What I'm doing here is this power supply has like a little notch here, which is a little hard to see. There we go. There's a notch here that holds this other last 4 pins in. So I hate this type of way of this connector. Unfortunately, I wish EVGA would just not do that and just have it like either snap into this piece so that you don't have to hold this while holding down the entire adapter to get it into the motherboard. It's a little trickier to do, and that will require a little bit more effort to get it into the board properly. And of course, it's a pain. There we go. Got it. There's a little clip. Make sure the clip goes to the clip on the back of the actual connector on the motherboard. Clip goes to the connector. If you're not sure, it will not actually plug in the right direction. They are keyed a certain direction, so if you're pushing too hard, you're doing it wrong, and you should flip it over or flip the connector over. You probably got it the wrong direction. Pull your CPU forward, and doing the same thing, you just plug in this. Check which way the clip goes, and you just plug in all the connectors to the board. Again, they should only really fit one way. So again, if you're pushing too hard, you're probably pushing the wrong direction. Now, we are ready for the graphic card at this point, because everything else is plugged in that we need to plug in. Now, if you have SATA connections, which are down here. All right, there we go. If you have SATA connections, they're going to be plugged in down here on the motherboard. You would plug those in before you plug in your graphic card, just because they are underneath the graphic card. When you put this graphic card in, it's going to cover this whole area over here. So it's going to be really hard to reach all this. You're going to end up taking the graphic card back out if you need to do something. So at this point, we're going to push this over out of the way, and we're going to take off the back piece here, which is just one screw. Well, this screw takes out this little levering system to get at the slots. I like to just take that out of the way just to get it out of my way. You can just leave it in there too if you want. Now, what I usually do, which I almost missed a step here, over there. Take the graphic card out. This is an AMD Radeon RX 6500 XT. It's a decent one for what it is. The workload that it needs to do. I almost stabbed myself. All right, there we go. This heap is a little weird. All right, so this graphic card is not all that big compared to most of the other ones that are out there. You know, if you're putting in something like an NVIDIA graphic card that's like a 3800 or 3900, that's going to be a lot longer. You're going to have a much bigger heat sink. You're going to have a much bigger die size. It comes with the driver. I don't even think there's a driver in here. No, there is a driver. We don't use that. We get the newest one from online. You know, don't use an old driver that was probably shipped with the unit. At this point, let's take this graphic card out. Carefully. Set that out there. Now, here comes the tricky part. Before you put the graphic card in, some of the graphic cards, if you can see here, have a little reflection surface, which means that there's plastic on the back plate. If there's plastic on the back plate, you're gonna have to peel it off. It's not fun to peel off. It's not like all the rest of them. It's a little harder. But once you peel, you can just pull the whole piece off pretty easily. But just make sure you pull this off. Don't leave this on there. You will have a problem. Oh, it does say remove film before use. So I guess, you know, it kind of reminds you, but just make sure to take that off. There's also plastic on this side also. So if you see here, there's a lot of plastic. So you're gonna wanna take all of this plastic off. Don't leave any of this on. If you do leave it on, you will have a bad day. It will eventually heat up and it'll make it a lot harder to take off. If you even can take it off, sometimes it may even melt to the other part of the plastic. So rip all this off. Just peel all this stuff. Be sure to get everything. You know, check all the insides here to make sure there's no plastic, which there was a little piece here. Put a lot of plastic on here. All right. I guess it makes it nicer looking, I guess. All right. There's also, if you look really closely, there's plastic on the logos. You want to peel that. Those are the ones that are hard to peel off. There we go. Do not leave any plastic on here. Again, if you start your graphic card up, it may not melt. Like if it's on the fan, it probably won't melt. But if it's on like the heat sink or close to this plastic area, which is gonna get hot, that will melt. So just give it another once over, make sure there's nothing on there. That's interesting. Fans are a little, this cable's a little longer than normal. All right, now you're ready to pretty much insert it in. Now the only thing you gotta do is you gotta take one more thing off, which is the bottom piece here that protects the slot. So a little slot cover. And if you want, you could take the little HDMI connections out as well. I know this is HDMI and DisplayPort. I'm gonna take the HDMI out. I already know that the customer has an HDMI monitor, so that's why I'm gonna take that out. But if you have a DisplayPort, take the plastic out for the DisplayPort. I'm gonna leave that on there just for dust purposes to keep the dust out. So now what you're gonna do is you're gonna line this up with the back part of the case, and you're gonna figure out which slots you're gonna have to take the slot covers off. There are slot covers here. In this case, it is slots 2 and 3, if you're going from the top, or slots, oh, it's still 2 and 3. So, just what you're gonna do, I'm gonna put this over here, just on a soft surface. There we go. You're gonna take out the slot covers, the back slot covers. Keep the screws because you're gonna need the screws, but you are not gonna need the little plate slash slot cover. You can take these out. Keep them off to the side if you're gonna, you may wanna, if you don't want to take the graphic card out or something, you don't want it later, or if you gotta move stuff around, they're good to keep around just in case. All right, next, take the graphic card, slide it into the slot itself, making sure that you line it up properly first before you line it into the slot. By the way, before I do that, let me show you one more thing. There is a release mechanism here. Okay. If you ever have to take your graphic card out, you'll have to push it. You'll have to push this down, like how it is now. It's in a down position. When it's up like that, that means it's locked. When it is down, it allows you to take the graphic card out. If you don't do this before taking the graphic card out, you could damage your motherboard, so do not forget to push that down. And that should also push the graphic card up a little bit out of its socket. So make sure you unscrew everything, get it ready, then push this button to release the graphic card from the motherboard. Now at this point you want it in the unreleased area so it snaps in properly. So make sure it's pushed back, and then you're gonna line it up, and once it's lined up, gonna give it a little push. You should hear a click. If you heard a click, you're good to go. And that means that the card is now seated properly in the motherboard. At this point, you want to screw down your front panel, your back panel, I'm sorry, the slots for the back panel. You want to make sure to push this forward a little bit. Wow, this really barely lines up. Okay. This may be a little tight for certain graphic cards. Just make sure the screw goes all the way down. Make sure the card is seated down nicely. You're gonna wanna plug in the PCI Express cable, but we're gonna do that in a second. Let me get the last little plate cover here just to get that in place. Just it's a little pain in the ass to get this in, so we're just gonna slip this way. And of course, it does not fit, does it? Does it wanna fit? There we go. Come on. Oh, this this graphic card. Okay, this graphic card's a little taller here. Did not see that. So we're not. Well, we're gonna have to take the card back out, put the piece back in, which is going to make my life a little harder. If you're doing your own system, you did this, you probably don't care for this little cover. You can leave the cover out, it'd probably just be better off. But since this is a customer build, we don't want that. So we're gonna have it done right. I'll push the button. Okay, that's a bad angle. Okay, slide the card out. Put the card back over here for a sec. Let me just put this back in. Put the cover on first. All right. Leave it loose because you're gonna need space to move everything around. And then slide this back in. This cover is really annoying, so if it's your own build, I would probably just avoid this. It's not that much of a hole or a gap just to be playing around with this. So, but if you're doing this professionally, you really should do it right. Okay, snap it back in. Put the plate cover down, and just screw back in the. Screw back in the graphic card, and then you can also put the screw back into the plate cover, which I am going to find the hole here. There we go. Yeah, this plate cover is not great. It's just to cover that little hole, but it also gives you enough room to move the card in and out of that area. All right. Now we just need to plug in the graphic card. In this case, we don't need the one that has the little extra 2 pins. We only need the one that is a 6-pin. So we're just going to plug the 6-pin directly in. Again, make sure it says PCIe. I don't know if you can read that there. It says PCIe. And then you're just going to plug that straight into the card. Make sure it's in place. It shouldn't click out. It should click all the way in. And then you're going to do is you're going to pull back this slack back to the other side of the case. You could actually go this direction. You could go here, but if you go here or there, you're going to see more of this cable. Going underneath, you're only going to see this amount of the cable once you're done. You're only going to see a little bit of the cable going around this direction, so it should be perfect. Yeah, so we can start pulling everything back for the cable management. So the last bit of the cable management, let's turn this around. You'll also see if I can slide this in there without causing too much of a problem. Okay. I'm just going to pull it back that far. Should be down and away from the fans. Just trying to make sure I'm away from the fans that are below. So, there we're good enough. All right. Now we're going to put this back the other way so you can see all the cable management that's going to require here. We're going to do all the little anchors here. Let me get all the wire ties wherever I left them. They are a few here. And that's a cut one. Oh, they're over here. Okay. So at this point, we're going to pull the cables back so they're nice and taut this way, so that they're at least going, you're not going to have so much cable on the other side. Now what we're going to do is we're going to use all cable ties and go into each one of these anchors. And to get it into the anchor, we're going to just bend the end or the tip of the cable tie a little bit so that it is now bent in one direction, so we can now slide through on each section. So I'm just going to slide through, pull, cable tie it, make sure to pull the rest of the slack up, and then tighten it to the anchor. Same thing, going to repeat the process a few times, so just keep going. Again, bend the cable tie so it slips under the anchor really easily. Pull the full cable up and around, and then cable tie around, and then just slip it in. Again, pull all the slack, push down. Push down. This is a very repetitive process, so throw some music on when you're going to do this, I guess. All right. All right. Let me pull this out. Pull this all the way through. When you're pulling these through, make sure that you turn the wire the direction that you're putting the anchor, so that at least this way the wire is going the direction that you want to go, which it should be following the anchor and then coming down. This way you don't have to worry about, you know, fighting the wire. The wire shouldn't fight you. You should be able to just push it in one direction. And it should go through with no problem. Again, just repeat again. Down, through, connect. Okay. That goes underneath. Try to straighten the wires out a little bit. And now what you're going to do is you're going to follow this direction. You need to go doop, 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 all the way down. So this is going to come out. You're going to pull this cable back. Pull back the slack. All the slack so you don't have any slack on the opposite side. And I'm going to just tie down the top pieces first, but usually you should probably should go top down. You should probably keep them in the same order, going all the way down. So I'm going to just do the same thing here. Slide this under. Again, I'm just bending up the cable tie a little bit so that I can easily get it underneath the anchor point. If you have a hard time getting it underneath the anchor point, that's the best way to do it, is just give it a little bend. You're going to cut that piece off anyway when you're done, so it's not going to make a difference. I just like to get this a little tighter. There we go. Same thing. Okay, now once that's tied down, you want to pull this one's going to now join in to this bunch. So you're going to have an anchor right here. So this anchor, no, it's good. That anchor right there is going to go with this. So it's going to tie that down all the way down to the bottom. Okay. Pull that forward. Slide a little bit. Make sure you get the cable nice and tight on there so it doesn't loosen from the anchor. You don't want to go too tight to the point that you're going to break the zip tie, but it should zip nicely. It shouldn't have any problem. Again, still go the same direction. Keep going downwards. If you're going down to the bottom of the case, this is where all the extra wire. This is where all the extra wire is going to go. So just keep pulling everything straight down the case so it's out and away from everything else. Now this one on this side, there's not much to really do here. There's only one tie. So we're going to just tie that down to the one anchor that we have available. Try not to make these cables too thick. In other words, don't put this over here, because if you put this over here, it's going to make this even thicker coming down, and it's going to make it harder to close the case. This case happens to be recessed a little bit, so it's a little recessed from the actual cover, but not every case is. If that case is not recessed, you're going to have a really hard time getting these cables to stay in one place. So if there's no recess and it's very thin on this side, you're going to want to flatten the cables down a little bit more before you actually tie everything in. So what you're going to do is you're going to flatten if you want to flatten the cables, you would put them side by side like that, so they're a little bit more flat, and you would not tighten as much. I'm going to tighten all the way down because we have plenty of room, but if you don't, you'll want to flatten the cable a little. Make sure all the wires are down. In this case they are. They're all down here. At this point you can clip all these little ends. So just go around, clip everything. Careful your fingers, of course. And be careful, of course, of the wire. Do not clip the wire. That would be bad. So just keep clipping until you're done. Everything's clipped. It looks nice. Take any little clippings out of there. That's it for the wire management on this side, but we want to still include the bunch of cables. Again, it comes with these metal ties. Just take the metal ties out, clip the metal tie off, and what you're going to do is this is going to be too thick for one tie, so you're going to use two. You're gonna take the two ties, put them together, push till they clip together, and then just ravel around the entire thing, entire bunch. They're nice and tied together. Push down so they're nice and small. And we're going to put this at the bottom of the case, but we're going to tie it into the bottom of the case. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to take the other screws. We have two little screw bags for the 2.5-inch SSDs and the 3.5-inch hard drives. Don't trust this to anybody, but like even for your own self, it's best to, everybody loses the screws and you can't get them again, and it makes it a real pain in the butt. So just use your knife, puncture a little hole, put a tie through this side. It's just going to tie it to these cables here. So you're going to push it through. You're going to tie it to the cables that you already have. Just loop it into one of the cables. And tie it again, just push it down. Tie it nice and tight so it stays. Clip the ends. Now what you're going to do is you're going to tie all of this down to the bottom. So to do that, it's a little tricky. There are some holes down at the bottom. Let's see if I can move this. All right, there are some holes down here. There's like 4 sets of holes. I'm gonna do the ones in the front because the ones in the front don't have a grommet, so it makes it a little easier to get the wire tie through. And we're gonna tie that down into the case, onto this side of the case, so that it doesn't move. You don't want stuff moving around in a case, especially if you don't want stuff basically moving around just in case you move your computer around. You don't want stuff to like fly into another fan or something like that. So you'll want to tie everything down. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to connect 2 of these together. I'm going to wrap it around and then tie it to the bottom part of the case. Poking out the bottom is just the wire tie. And the wire tie is not going to really poke out. It's just going to show like as if, there's a little strip there. I'm going to make this easier if I just push this through first, and then I want to slip it through. I might actually do 3 because there's so much cabling. Yeah, I'm going to do 3. Yeah, I'm just going to connect 3 of these together, so it's a little like kind of more of a square almost. Except we're missing one there. We don't need one there though. This is more than enough. This should definitely fit through. I'm just going to put the wire ties in first to make it easier, and then I don't want to close them all the way up until I've gotten the cable latched around and into the little loop I just made. There we go. Nice into the loop. Okay, now I got them tied down. I'm going to hold those down and pull on the bottom, and I'll make a little way to hold all the cables in one spot. I'm going to pull that through a little bit, tighten the other one, and tighten this one. Yeah, that one's already tight, that's good. And now I'm just going to clip off the excess little ties, little tails, I mean. Ooh, the tails, that is way too close. Okay, there we go, the little tails off. And now, that's at the bottom. Now this has feet, so it gives you a little clearance for that little bit of a, tie there, so you won't even see that. It's gonna be at the bottom. But now all of the cables, all of the screws, everything is down at the bottom, nice and neat, so that if you need this, if a technician comes back in here and goes, oh crap, I gotta add a hard drive, they could just cut this little bundle, put the drive back in place, already have the connector for it, as well as the screws for the connections here. The only thing I don't put in here is the SATA cables, and there's a reason for that. We don't have room. is pretty much the reason for that. And we always have tons of SATA cables. That's not a problem. The customer does usually get these cables if they want them. We do include them. It's just 2 cables for SATA. So, but most of the time, if we're doing a hard drive, putting a hard drive in or taking a hard drive out, or upgrading a hard drive, we'll usually bring SATA cables with us because we know that we need them. So that's it for the system. It should be ready to boot at this point. Let me just double check everything on this side. Yeah, okay. Just tuck this a little bit more underneath. Sorry, I was not happy with that. Okay, this doesn't have a glass panel, but this is pretty good for the amount of cables that are only shown. The only cable that's really shown is the one for the graphic card. That's, you know, not going to get really much more around that. That's just the way it's going to be. You know, it has to come up to that part of the board. So, you know, it's as good as it's going to get. Now, if you're going to do a glass panel, you would want to get some custom cables done and get some nice cables. These are not bad looking cables, but you can match them. You can get them color coordinated. You can do them all different ways. So spend a few bucks if you really want to, if you're doing a glass front case. If you're not doing a glass front case, it doesn't matter because no one's going to see it anyway except for you. So unless you're really that picky about it, you can certainly do that. Let's do a boot. Let's also switch this camera view because this is horrible. There we go. All right, so let me get the, I have some wires here to connect, I think. Yes, I do. All right, let's push this forward and out of the way a little bit. Oh, okay. Now, what do we got? I need power, obviously. Power, and we're gonna need, where is my, there we go, HDMI. I have an HDMI connection. Obviously, the HDMI connection you want to plug in is the one that's on the graphic card and not the one on the motherboard, because this motherboard does have onboard video. That's the one that we just installed the graphic card on. That's the one that you want to plug into. Make sure if you don't plug into that, it's not going to probably do any display. I'm going to plug in keyboard and mouse really quickly. Keyboard, mouse. All right. I'm just going to do a post test. I'm not going to do a BIOS upgrade because I'm kind of running low on time. Yeah, this is like an hour just to do this. So, yeah, let's just do a quick post. That is camera. I'm going to say 4. I think it's 4. So let's see. Let's power it on. On. Keyboard came on. Power button, power light came on, that's a positive. Graphic card came on. Make sure the fans are spinning. No, they're not spinning yet, but it's probably not hot enough. So we'll have to wait a few seconds. Hopefully we'll get a post. AMD is very slow to boot up the first time, so expect this to be a while. Just gotta have to wait. Anytime now. Or did I screw something up? I hate this long wait. Huh. Was it camera 4? Let's see. That's connected. Okay. Come on. This is a very, there we go. Holy garbage. That took a long time. How long was that? That was way long. All right. It's obviously saying insert boot disk because I don't have anything there, but we can go in the BIOS. Get the keyboard here. I'm just pushing the delete key to get into the BIOS. I just want to make sure the BIOS comes up. Yeah, it says please, you know, BIOS has been reset. It's a new motherboard, so that's what it does. So hit OK. And you just want to make sure, like, you know, check everything. You want to make sure that you have a good temperature, which we do. You want to make sure that you get the right CPU installed. You know, frequency looks good. Memory frequency is wrong, so that needs to be addressed. Obviously, XMP is not on. Where are you in here? We are, you know, I can't see because I'm trying to see over myself. Here we go. Okay. Hands frequency. Ah, here we go. So you got XMP, it's an undisabled, so we will want to put that to profile 1. That will give us DDR4 and 3200 speed. That is pretty good. That's the right speed now. We have to do, if you're gonna do XMP, you need to run a memory test because not every board accepts XMP right. So not every RAM really works with XMP either. So if you have RAM that supports it, you should use it, but you know, make sure to run a memory test anyway, just in case. And we're ready to go. So at this point, we can hit save settings, which you guys don't see there, but it's there. Save settings and exit. So what we're gonna do, let me move myself over here, maybe, that's better. So you also wanna make sure you got everything. You know, we have a hard drive in place, that hard drive is showing up. If you wanna go in here and do a lot more configuration, you can. I don't usually overclock because we have business computers, so you don't wanna overclock on a business computer. You need reliability. You don't need, you know, extra speed that may not be reliable. So we'll definitely go through all these settings at some other point in time, but if you do an XMP profile, again, run a memory test. We use MemTest86, so, or MemTest86, I think it is. It's in the description. I also included the WD diagnostics as well. We run that just to be sure that the hard drive is good before we hand it to a customer. We want to make sure everything is in working order. We do a quick test on the hard drive. We do more of a more lengthy test on the memory because the memory, you'll end up with a real big problem if that memory is all screwy. So, but that's about it. I don't want to get into the system load because it's going to take a very long time, and it's just watching a progress bar. It's not very exciting. So yeah, we're not going to do that until maybe, we'll probably do a video on how to load that because then we can actually cut down the time and keep it kind of simple. We really don't want to do a live stream for loading that. It's just really lengthy. I'm going to save these settings right now and exit. Usually you would have a memory test. I don't have, that actually comes up pretty quick, but it's a very long process anyway. When you run the memory test, it's gonna take about 40 minutes to run a memory test all the way through, at least, if you have 16 gigs of RAM. The more RAM you have, the little longer it's gonna take because it has to go and write to all this, you know, all the sections of memory, all the blocks of memory. So you're gonna have a hard time waiting for that to go through it. I'm not gonna run that right now. It's just gonna take too long. So I'm gonna end this stream at this current time. This is just a basic build. You know, basic, I say basic, but it's actually pretty decent for what it is. You know, this will last at least a good few years for the system. Maintenance-wise, the only thing you really need to do maintenance-wise is just clean out dust and probably redo the thermal paste after about 3 years. The thermal paste gets a little bit corroded. If you have a laptop, same thing, you really should probably redo the thermal paste on your laptop as well. If you ever noticed a laptop that seems to slow down after 3 to 5 years, you probably should go in there and take apart part of the laptop and take out the, you know, take the heat sinks off and the fans and all that stuff and clean out that thermal paste and put some new ones on. Graphic card wise, I think they usually use thermal pads, which last a little longer, and they also have some thermal paste underneath there. I'd have to look up the recommendation on it. I think it's different on each type of card on when you need to actually change that. If you need to change that on a graphic card, it's a lot of screws, so be sure to do a screw map and keep organized on which screw goes where, because they are different lengths and different sizes, different thicknesses, so you're going to have a lot of different things going on. Make sure to just keeping everything in nice order. Same thing with a laptop if you're going to take it apart. That's the end of the stream. So this is system build number 3. Please like and subscribe to the video. It will help us in the algorithms. And also, you know, stay subscribed because we are going to have videos coming up soon. But for now, we are only doing pretty much live streaming. Our normal live stream is on Saturday at 3:30 p.m. That's on different topics. So if you want, come back then. And we hope to see you at the next live stream. And I'm going to use the right mouse. There we go. And